Amazon stocks just dropped 11%. Microsoft is down 16% on the year. And yesterday, tech stocks as a whole dropped again. The S&P's 500 software and services index was down 15% as of the end of January, just a couple days ago. But why is this happening? Today, we're gonna cover what's going on in the stock market and why that's important for us to know as men who want to remain relevant, respected, and financially free, because relevant respect requires you to have work, it requires you to have clients, it requires you to have useful skills. And financially free requires both that and the ability to store ownership, whether that's in property or in stocks or in bonds or in Bitcoin or so on and so forth. So let's get into it. What is happening here? Well, the reality is that investors and banks are getting cold feet about AI. They're starting to get cold feet. Over the past several years, we've seen AI is going to blow up. It's going to replace all of our jobs. It's going to automate. And quite frankly, I think there's a lot of truth to that. We'll get back into that in just a moment. But the reality is that AI just creates a ton of uncertainty. You see, 2026 is going to be, I believe, and it's supposed to be the year that AI will start to really boost the bottom line for productivity. And, there are signs of it. We're seeing companies like Salesforce. I talk about Salesforce a lot because I think it's an interesting use case, but they're saying that their agent force is just so effective that they don't need humans anymore, that it's taking care of all their customer service. Heck, Mark Benioff laid off half of his customer service staff. So we are seeing that AI is creating booms in efficiency. Just a few weeks ago, we saw the OpenClaw agent framework launch, and tons of developers and tons of software newbies started automating everything with AI agents. So this is going to be a big year, but it remains very, very volatile. And the reality is that a lot of these companies are spending so much money and they just haven't seen the returns yet on it. It's hard to say, because we implement all this AI, this is where the numbers lie. This is the math equation. This is the result at the end. There's also a ton of speculation, just as a side note, about jobs as a whole. And you guys know, all the subscribers of the channel, all the commenters on the channel know, and I've seen this comment quite a bit, is that, well, if AI is so efficient and it replaces all of our jobs, then who's going to have money to actually buy anything? That's a concern. If people don't have money because they lose their careers or they lose their jobs or they become irrelevant, well, they're just not going to have money to go buy these fancy softwares. And the other thing that we're seeing, at least on the software side, is that on a smaller scale, if AI and vibe coding becomes so prolific and so proficient, you're not going to need to buy these expensive, robust SaaS programs and add in a bunch of users and team users in your organization. You're not going to need to pay for a ton of different features that you don't actually need. You just need a CRM to send emails out. Well, you don't need an entire HubSpot at $100,000 a year. You'll be able to create your own using AI, and it's going to be customized to your organization. Now, you might say, Mark, we don't know that's going to happen, and AI writes bad code, and it hallucinates, and it doesn't understand context, and all that stuff, and that's fine. I don't necessarily disagree with you. However, the fact of the matter is that there's a possibility that that could happen. And if AI gets to that point where you as an organization or as a small business are able to just manufacture your own software for your organization, that completely changes the way that SaaS works as a whole. And I've seen and even personally created some stuff using Replit that's pretty impressive. It's pretty useful. Of course, it's buggy and so on and so forth. But the reality is, again, as this gets better, as smaller engineers become better and more prolific and proficient at prompting AI, and as the AI gets better, there's a possibility that SaaS will just be completely upended. I mean, just a few days ago, Claude released their new co-work bot, and we saw a $1 trillion stock jump, and we covered that in a video. I'll post a link to that video here, or excuse me, a stock dump, $1 trillion stock dump after that happened. Why? It created a lot of uncertainty. And if there's one thing investors don't like, it's uncertainty. As they say in Vegas, the house always wins. That's what you want. You always want to win. You don't want to take a big gamble and lose. So, at any rate, I think that's important to note. But there is more to it than just that. There is uncertainty, but there's more to it than that. To add on that, the expenditures from big companies like Amazon and Microsoft on AI infrastructure is the numbers are completely insane. And you don't just need to take my word for it. We have a quote here from the chief investment strategist at PNC, Amara, who says, quote, the concern is that they're spending far too much money. Get these numbers, guys. These numbers are crazy. Amazon projects $200 billion in CapEx spending for 2026. That's data centers, that's AI infrastructure, 200 billion. Cloud. Microsoft reaffirmed plans to spend $80 billion annually on AI infrastructure. And we've covered that in a decent detail on the channel. Subscribers know that these expenditures are happening, that tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars are being spent on AI. Why? Because that's where the gains are going to be. But again, now the banks, now the investors are starting to say, well, is that where the gains are going to be? And we'll cover that in a moment, because there is a life cycle that's worth talking about. It's called the Gartner Hype cycle. We're going to talk about the Gartner Hype cycle in just a moment, because I think that's important. And, just to expand on this a little bit more, we talked about this in an Oracle video, about Oracle a few days ago. I'll post a link to it here, where there's speculation they're going to lay off 30,000 people in order to free up capital, because the banks are saying, well, we don't want to loan you another $10 billion for more data center construction. We aren't sure we're going to get the investment back. We covered that in a video a few days ago. So subscribers, if you're subscribed to the channel, this would not be a surprise to you. You know that this is coming, you know this is happening, because you're staying informed. The next piece to this puzzle is the price to earnings ratio, which is essentially a stock valuation metric that shows how much investors are willing to pay for each dollar of the company's earnings. How much are you willing to invest based on how much the company is earning? And some of the price to earnings ratios for these big companies is completely bananas. It's completely bananas. Listen to this. The forward price to earnings ratio for the software and services index recently fell to 22.7 times, which basically is about a normal amount. For a tech company, you're looking at about 20 to 25x on your price to earnings ratio. But the Mag 7 has had just completely absurd price to earnings ratios. Apple, 28x. That's above our normal amount, 20 to 25x. And by the way, there's in other industries outside of tech, the price to earnings ratio is typically lower. Get this, Microsoft, 31x price to earnings ratio. Amazon, 31x. So again, both of these companies well above average. Listen to this though, Nvidia, 46x price to earnings ratio, and Tesla, 400x price to earnings ratio. Essentially what we're seeing here is companies are just potentially wildly overvalued. I mean, as much as people like to hate on Elon, that dude, the only reason there's a 400x price to earnings ratio on Tesla is because of Elon Musk, bottom line. And what he's been able to accomplish, he has receipts. But anyway, I don't want to get all into Elon. We covered Elon and his master plan a few days ago. I'll post a link to that video here. But regardless, what it seems to me, and probably to you, is that investors are starting to say, maybe we overhyped what's happening here. And there is a law, it's called Amara's law. We cover this, and I cover this in my newsletter about a week ago. You can subscribe to my newsletter at aiupdate.ai. It's completely free. It's a completely free newsletter, aiupdate.ai. Post a link below so you can check it out. But Amara's law says, quote, we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And what I've seen in the comments below is a ton of smart men just like you who have different views on this stuff, especially the software engineers and developers saying like, well, it doesn't write good code, or it's not that effective, or AI is just overhyped. It's just a bunch of hype. It's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's always an Indian. These types of comments. And then the flip side, other people are saying like, this is amazing. I was able to do this. I was able to write that. It's completely changed my business. I know people who have changed their businesses with AI. Guys that are smarter than me. I'm just a regular dude, okay? Let's be straight. I'm just a regular dude. So The reality, though, is that Amara's law is in effect, and people are taking two sides of that. And again, Amara's law, we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And I believe that is what's exactly what's happened here. Amara's law playing out right before our eyes, and it's being manifested in the stock market. Let's go a step deeper, though, and let's talk about the Gartner Hype cycle. And essentially what the Gartner's Hype cycle is the life cycle of when new technology comes out. And I think it flows really well with Amara's law. So the Gartner Hype cycle basically states that there's a technology trigger which creates peak inflated expectations, which leads to the trough of disillusionment, which leads to the slope of enlightenment, which leads to the plateau of productivity. And if those words don't make sense to you, let me lay it out here. And again, if you subscribe to my newsletter, I'll be writing a little bit more about this with some charts and graphs. But essentially, what does this mean? Well, there's a new technology that generates buzz, excitement. People are like, wow, this is amazing, this is crazy. Sound familiar? Artificial intelligence is exactly that, okay? And it creates a huge hype bubble. Everyone's jumping on. We gotta do it. We gotta invest. What's our AI strategy? What are we doing? What's our plan? Then the reality sets in as the bubble bursts. People are like, oh, well, I was told that I'll be able to write my entire business instantly with just typing in a few prompts into Replit, and then I'll have a fully working software. Actually, it's kind of buggy and it doesn't understand the database, and it's a little messy here. And if I ask it to fix one thing, it ends up messing up something else, and they're like, okay, this is maybe not what I expected. What we're seeing here, oh, well, you were gonna spend $150 billion on data centers, but it actually turns out that there's regulation issues. And we actually don't have the energy to support all those GPUs. And now we're actually gonna send them into space. We start to have the reality set in. And then we move into the slope of enlightenment, where the survivors learn the technology and adapt the technology as it matures. Oh, well, if we, maybe we don't need massive data centers, or maybe we do need massive data centers, but we just need this nuclear technology, and we needed the deregulation in this particular area to make it work. Do you start to see how this works? Maybe we get to a point where we say, well, we thought that AI was just gonna write all the code, but actually it's just gonna be video. It's gonna be insanely effective AI video that completely takes over the media market. Like, we don't know where things are going to go. A few years ago, Zuckerberg changed the name of his entire organization to Meta, and he was betting on the metaverse. Turns out that didn't work out. Now he's putting all his money on AI wearables and glasses, which, by the way, I think are going to be insanely huge. Insanely huge. Insanely huge. I don't think people understand how big AI glasses are going to be. Regardless, we go into the slope of enlightenment, where survivors learn as the tech matures. And then lastly, the tech becomes stable, it becomes mainstream, everyone's using it. That, my friends, is the plateau of productivity. So where are we now in this life cycle? When we see the stock market dumping like a week ago, $1 trillion. We see Amazon down 11% this year, Microsoft down 16% this year. When we see this happening, where are we at? Are we in the trough of disillusionment? Are things dumping because of that? Because the reality, guys, is that you want to buy in, you want to get in when you're in the trough of disillusionment from an investment standpoint. You don't want to buy in during the peak of inflated expectations. You want to buy in the trough. Then it goes up, buy low, sell high, right? But at the end of the day, what does this matter? Why should we care? Well, when it comes to be relevant, respected, and financially free, we need to understand where the money flows. We need to understand where the investment is happening. We need to understand what's happening with technology. That's what this channel is about, guys. It's not about understanding and predicting everything, but it's about finding our lane. It's about knowing what's happening in the market so that we can be relevant, respected, and financially free as men. I'll be damned if I let someone else pay all my bills, or if I'm going to rely on UBI or this idea from Elon that, oh, well, you won't have anything. We'll just buy everything for you and everything will be free. And it's going to be, I don't buy into that. It's never happened in human history. I don't buy into that. I want to be relevant, respected, and financially free. And by understanding where money's flowing, by understanding where the hype cycle's at, well, that allows us to understand where the jobs will be. cybersecurity, automation, data center construction, leadership. If we know where the money is flowing, we know where the opportunity is. If money stops flowing there, we say, ooh, maybe the opportunities aren't there. Where is the money flowing? That's where the opportunity is, guys. And this is where money goes. This is where money grows. Having at least some understanding of what's happening on the stock market is absolutely important and vital for being financially free. And I'll give you a perfect example. We've had really high inflation over the last few years. At one point, it was at 7%, okay? If you have 20K sitting in a checking account at a 7% inflation rate, by the end of that 1 year, you have just burned, you have been lost, you have been taxed, you have hit with the inflation tax of $1,400. Your $20,000 has just lost $1,400 in value. We don't want that. We want it to go the opposite way. If we have cash, if we have 20K in the bank, I want to gain $1,400. And this is why it's important to understand and be thinking and be talking about this. And I know a lot of you guys there, you already know this, you get it, but there's a lot of guys out there that don't. There's a lot of guys out there that don't. And we need to bring that message to them because this is going to be vital to our goal of helping men to be relevant, respected, and financially free. End of the day, what do you think? Are we in a massive bubble? Has it already burst? Are we at the bottom? Are we moving up? Where are we at? You let me know in the comments. And if you like today's video, check out yesterday's video where we talk about Heineken. They just had a huge dump. They are dumping thousands, up to 6,000 employees. Why? AI and productivity. They are implementing AI and productivity at scale. So go check out that video, and I'll see you there, boys. Peace.